crime, or you're this, you're that, you have 30 years of addiction, but you're barely 50 and you've raised 20-year-old son, but
right.
not different addiction. And none of it makes sense, man. Not
nope.
And so, I mean, they can be like, oh, he burnt her ass, whatever. I'm tired of it. They can do whatever the fuck they want, man. It's all lies. I know it is. But those that don't listen, don't know, can't see, don't want to see, it ain't my problem.
Well, and sometimes it's just easier to listen than it is to decipher. And we become what we listen to in some ways. If all you've got is that type of input and you don't know any different, you haven't heard the other person's story. I keep hearing people in my head saying, well, I can't listen to her because I can't understand her. You can't form an opinion on what's been said because you didn't hear it. You're hearing what other people are saying was said, and they didn't hear it either. So 6 people down the line, man, you're not getting the truth. You're not.
It's just like that red truck thing we went through. Was it yesterday, dude?
Good God.
Another red truck. And that's the thing. At this place, they all concentrate on one, which is the red truck. Right? But who the fuck knows who the red truck is other than, you know what I mean? And there's so many things out there. And there's so many different red trucks around on coming and going from Ben Hill and through that community during those days and that day. And then subsequent weeks and months, and then you hear one wrecked, and you have all this like leaps that would, it's just wild what they can feed people. And they have to leap over the most insane amounts of common sense and logic to be like, oh my God, right. That day and the cops are there. Well, that means Dawn's lying. No, it doesn't. And I happen to be there, luckily enough, to be able to tell the world Dawn was telling the truth because we have posts between each other, messages between each other. Like all these things are real. And I happened to be there when he was watching the interview, and I pointed out, I was like, Dawn, they just misunderstood what you said, and now they think that was on the 15th. But you can see on this other piece that Prairie knew it was that day, but then they knew Dawn didn't have good signal, so they went ahead and changed it to, oh, you mean June 15th. But right before that, he said this morning. So they knew. Yep. And they tried to change it up on Dawn. But where they were with the police report, phone calls, anything else, they offer them out for everything else, trying to get their little hands on them. It's because they know better. But here they are pushing out the narrative like there's a wrecked truck on June 15th at the bottom of the driveway, but for some reason the feds are still looking for one. Give me a break,
Yeah. And it takes a while. Mud Pie said I watched them for 4 months before I started scratching my head like, wait a minute. Usually when you're in a group of people that you know or think you do, and you're just enjoying the banter, being part of the crowd, some of these things don't stand out at you right away. Like it's everyone going, yeah, and agreeing with each other. And those that really argue are kind of slapped down fast, right? So that's one way to create sort of a crowd mentality or a gang mentality in some ways, right? And they have, oh, how early did they the whole thing when they went with Benny? Immediately, gang, right? That was sad because I'm all of a sudden seeing them as being like a crowd that's being aimed at somebody by people we don't know. We don't know what their credibility is. We don't know what their credentials are, although they try photojournalists or something. I'm kind of a journalist for YouTube. But they have no right to be, they're not L.E. L.E. has spoken to Jody Sue and her family. I don't know how, but when you go through all of the YouTube videos, just come one after another, it went right into the beginning of your interview with, what's his name, a couple weeks ago. And the first thing he plays is the whole thing with Ansley Daniels saying, this is what happened and this is what Jody Sue said. And I listened to the whole thing. And I don't know if I've ever heard it.
Clip, but they stood there in interviews. I mean, like mine was hours, and then my daughter was supposed to interview too, but by this point, the stalkers for Cam and 423 and all them they're filming. They already stalked the journalists. They'd stalked us. They were filming my kids. We left, and they have to compile all of those hours
and break it down to 5 minutes, right?
And I knew that they had some stuff a little wonky in a written piece that went with the video, but I didn't care. It's still the only way we agreed to finally do a news piece like that was if it stayed centered on Summer, because when they said they were doing pieces with Cam and 423 and the Billboard shit, I was like, oh, that's a scam.
God.
And I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, yeah, there's some things there. But anyway, it was like, and Cam and others had already been in trouble with Nexstar, and all these things were happening. And I mean, everybody watched us get like tailgated in a frightening sense all the way back here. Then we get threats of SA and harm and my daughter and murder of us and fed to hogs and shit if we didn't basically tell what had been told to WJ jail. I mean, within seconds of arrival here by this group and one notorious around here. And it had to come from Cam, the Stalkers, 423, and then directly back to this tragedy pimp group for them to know, because we kept it quiet, told no one the interview was upcoming, and the only way we agreed to do it was if it stayed on quiet, told no one the interview was upcoming, and the only way we agreed to do it was if it stayed on Summer and not on YouTube. And that was a promise, and that's what we did. And so I didn't really care if they screwed up things here and there, had to edit it in certain ways or anything like that, because it kept legit media attention on Summer, And it's like people make shit out of my son saying that it's kind of an animalistic sound.
Yeah, right? I didn't see any weird expression on his face when he said that. He sounded like somebody said that the other day, like, oh, I saw this look on his face. And I was like, so I watched it with that in mind. And I thought, that's not what happened. He didn't even flinch. He just said it out loud as if it were something he heard. One more thing. Can I say, they said,
and I can tell you that that's not how he meant that, but all of us heard it in different ways. And it's like my daughter, she heard it continuing well after my son and myself, and heard it like it was muffled and moving away. And it was, so all three of us heard it, but all three caught different portions and the way it, so.
Well, you were in different spots. at different, near the window, near the door. You were inside, right? The same thing at the same time. And that whole unfounded thing came up repeatedly in different ways about other things that they found something else unfounded. It didn't mean they were saying anybody was lying, but the human experience. It's not something scripted. They also said the word she used was a plethora of people had come looking at the property. And I thought that was too bad because they were trying to say you were being vigilant because there had been some property concerns. Property lines were crossed and such, and so you were being vigilant. Well, that would make sense. But then she said because a plethora of people had come looking at that property. And I thought that's not what they said.
That's the thing. But I was always hyper vigilant anyway because, the only moments I got peace or sleep or anything are when Monster was gone. And then I always had to worry even during the day if he got pissed off at a coworker or some random store clerk supply that pissed him off or anything else, right? Or somebody just random and he was in the wrong mood. He would leave, literally tell me he was coming home and he'd see whatever, and it was to beat me to take out whatever it was that pissed him off. And so even if I was like, I missed a message or anything like that, then he's raising hell because of that. And then he's this, and then he's that, and he would come home to beat me if other people pissed him the fuck off to take it. And so even if I'd sleep 15, 20 minutes here, 15, 20 minutes there, and it's still, because if I missed something, I could miss him getting there before I could, I don't be woke up being beat, and that's happened enough in my life.
When you say that, people have a very hard time believing that something like that would happen. But when my daughter was 3 or so, she used to come and wake me on purpose if her dad came home late or early or something where I was still in bed so that we could go literally get in the shower. So we didn't have any exposure. And I'm telling you right now, there are people that do that. There are people that come home just to kick the dog. It's not.
And he would do, especially if he had something to do, like he was the news plaza, or he wants to fuck around or do whatever. He would come home, purposely start a fight, or do it throughout the day, right? Everything be happy, fine, and then all of a sudden one of his news plaza pieces of ass or whatever it was he's going to do, or he wanted to go get fucked up on dope or something that I didn't know about. There are different things there, right? And he would then turn the day bad on purpose, and you could see it coming, and you'd know. And it was like, but instead he would come home just long enough to beat, bang, and then if he wanted to stay gone for a few days, a couple weeks, do whatever with whatever splat was or whatever chick he thought he had a long-term chance with, then he would do whatever, and then he would jet off like he was mad. He had to, get out of there. It was everybody else's faults, and he hated being there, whatever, right? But actually, it was on purpose so he could go do as he pleased, and it didn't matter that the rest were left crying, wearing bruises, bleeding the fuck out. Absolutely go, super ballistic for no reason. He would build it up. You'd see him do so for days. It would increase and increase in intensity, and it didn't matter what you did. But then he would tell everybody else you were the one bitching, or would look that way because it's the only real time and space you had safety enough to speak your true thoughts and feelings instead of having to placate monster in person or whatnot and hope that they didn't get pissed off enough to beat your ass or kill you. And I can't tell you how many messages and phone calls and recordings I have of him literally saying, I'm not messaging anymore. So you have proof, calls only. So then I started taping the calls. Then the calls, it's like, he's mad at somebody at work or doing whatever. And he's all like, oh, wait a minute, bitch, till I get home. I'll show you what the fuck. And him literally telling me he's coming home to murder me. Understand, and it's
different for everybody, but it's hard for anyone who hasn't been there to really understand that that's a possibility. And so they poo-poo it and say, well, why didn't you just walk away or whatever it happens to be? Not saying that's not even here, but part of the point is people who have never been in that position, it's very much like anything else. If you've never been robbed, you don't understand the feeling of being robbed. If you've never been SA'd, you will never understand the mentality of a victim who has survived. If you've never been in a hurricane, you're never going to understand what a hurricane is. But it's like I can say it didn't happen.
Or himself and the kids on Ben Hill, we could have stayed there, right? But then he got pissed because I took out the order. Because he, even though he tells the world he left, he did this. Nope, he was catching me out by my shit. And it was, oh, hey, I just need time, space. But then I think it'd be okay to stop at work, because we've been through cycles before, right? Still communicating, still running, doing whatever. Hell, it happened every few weeks. It was nothing new. And so then I would stop at the workplace because he had just talked to me hours or the day before. And I'd be like, okay, well, and then he would put on a show for everybody like I was stopping once, but, and all this shit. But it's because New Supply was next door at the gas station. Because that's just the way it always works. I have, even his coworkers, I have messages from them. They can clearly hear that I call and he's asked me to, right? He'll be like, call me at a certain time. And then he'll make sure to be in front of somebody and he'll immediately start yelling and screaming at me like I've done something on the phone. But all I did was call like he asked or messaged. And then he would be like, fuck you, why are you calling me raising hell? And oh my God. But I have his coworkers who have known me longer than he has. They're like, girl, I heard you on there. Like, what the fuck? What are you yelling about? Or I heard him earlier in the bay or outside tell you to call him whatever time. Is this motherfucker a lunatic? I had his coworkers for the longest time with this news supply trying to clue me into what the fuck was going on in the bathroom next door. Also, shit, man. And they all knew. And even the worst of them thought that it was pretty gross. I'm hearing with cancer, no immune system. Him obviously spreading shit like he has before. Shit's broken. And they're giving me these fucking looks and telling me things and trying to, and it's just, it was disgusting even to them. It doesn't matter how long. Since we were kids, he had beat me and abused me from the get-go. And, they knew. And, it's like, even that to them, that was, they were like, holy shit, you know, they could tolerate the other, I guess. But then knowing that he was doing that next door,